Good morning, it is Brian here. It is Expert Dojo. This is the art of startup war, and I have a phenomenal founder for you. I have an incredible founder. I have a founder who's broken through in so many different industries that it is almost impossible to imagine that she will not do exactly the same thing. Now, I got loads of stuff to talk about, but I want to introduce you first to the show. Nan, welcome.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Okay, so today we're going to talk all about MyMarkit, which is your company that you have launched. It is insanely exciting because it takes in so many different aspects. It's not just a marketplace. It's not just luxury goods. It's not just blockchain. It's not just being able to tag and identify products all the way through the supply chain, but it's also this great convenience that people have not had access to before. And I think it's going to be super exciting. But so before we get to that, I want to talk a little bit about you. And I want to talk about your background and your history, because you are, at least when you came in here, the earliest stage entrepreneur I took through. But I would say top 2 percentile of entrepreneurs, which I was absolutely sure would make it, which is really, really hard to do. Because as an accelerator, when we make investments into companies, people want us to be futurists, but in reality, we're mathematicians, right? We kind of look at the numbers and we're like, okay, this is the cost of client acquisition. This is the amount of stuff that needs to be sold. This is how we can get the revenue to 100 grand and then $1 million a month and then 10 million a month. And we're like, okay, we've worked it out. But before a company actually is bringing in that revenue, it's incredibly difficult to do it. And you have to step back and say, okay, do I think it's an amazing market, which in your case it is? Do I think that folks are going to come in and they're going to start buying straight away, which I do? But really, none of those were the reasons why we made the investment. We made the investment exclusively because of who you are.
That's a very, very high bar. Thank you.
Yes,
thank you, Brian.
Exclusively. And as many other investors are listening to this podcast is mainly for investors to be able to find great startups themselves, then maybe if you can talk a little bit about your background and bring us through John Hopkins and bring us through Gossip Girl, all of the things that you've done to take you to this place, and then we're going to launch into MyMarkit.
Great. Yeah, no, thank you so much, Brian. That's very high accolades there. And at the end of the day, I think we got to where we are because of our team. I definitely want to preface with that. So this is not a one-man show. But a little on my background is that my background is very, very different from startup. And I think a common trend throughout my life has just been to do everything against the status quo and be that kind of something impossible and take it on and try to make it work. So my background is actually in neuroscience from John Hopkins. And I immigrated here from China when I was little, grew up in New Orleans, Louisiana, and was one of the only people in my small town to go out of state.
I love the way, by the way, I love the way you just flow past neuroscience. Like, yeah, didn't everybody do that? Wasn't it like an arts degree or neuroscience, and most people went for neuroscience? Pretty amazing. Like, talk about high bars. How impossible is it to even get into that school?
It is the hardest program at Hopkins other than biomedical engineering. So it's extremely competitive, and to graduate it is even harder. So I did undergrad neuroscience, pre-med, minor in philosophy at Johns Hopkins. And then I went on to grad school at Hopkins in biochemistry, molecular biology, which is pretty extensive. It's a special master's on track to Hopkins Med School.
Amazing.
And so we take the same classes as Hopkins Med. And I think there's like 90 credits in 9 months with a research thesis, and my thesis was in retinal neurogenesis and stem cells.
Amazing.
So
Incredible.
very extensive background in.
It speaks very highly to your execution. And many people, when I'm doing podcasts on the other side of the table, and people are saying, well, why do you invest? What do you look for? I say it's always one word. I mean, people will say team and they say person, but really that translates to me into execution. And when you look at someone and the incredible difficulty of having executed just to that moment of your life to get you to there, says to me that startup is a walk in the park. But please continue.
Yeah. No, I think you're exactly on point with that. You know, I have to, when people say, man, where do you get your like napalm fusion fuel from? And I'm just like, I think it's been throughout my entire life. I've been, Hopkins definitely, it's rigorous for a reason. It is so hard to go through that school. It's known to be very, very difficult, extremely difficult. They definitely don't help the students along like other Ivies. And so the hardest thing actually around that same time was, I think this was the physically most grueling aspect of my life, was I by happenstance got on a big TV show in New York City, and it's called Gossip Girl. So I was a main cast character, Kari Farkas, and then we had writer's strike, and I was kind of at a roadblock of figuring out if I wanted to, take time off from school and do the acting full time, or do acting full time with the show because it got so big, or do school. And I was the only person on the cast who did not come from an acting background. That was my third audition. I learned how to act the moment we were filming the pilot. I think I had never read a side or a script. And we're all in a circle here doing a scene, and I look over at the camera and I said my lines, and they cut so many times. They're like, "Man, what are you doing?" And I had to learn in that moment how to act. I was like, oh, I thought.
But you're a neuroscientist, for God's sake.
I was I thought the camera came from this side. So I was like, okay. So I had to learn as I went what sides were, everything about acting at that level, which is pretty overwhelming. But the hardest thing was I refused to give up on either. And I think everybody thought I was absolutely insane at the time to do this, but I did neuroscience Hopkins full time while I did filming on Gossip Girl full time in New York City. So that was a different states. That was a time difference by 4 hours. I think I tried to commute by plane, Acela, napped 2 hours on the train to take exam, study on set, and then go straight into New York City to film, and then PR events, and then going to Los Angeles for Warner Brothers and studio time. It was the most painful 4 years of my life, but I'm so proud to say I did it. And I graduated in 4 years, finished the show right around graduation time. So very, very happy to have done that.
Amazing. And then at what time did you decide that you wanted to start a startup? Because you're already at the two most opposing, there are no more opposing poles, right? You have acting on one side, and you have one of the most challenging medical careers on the planet on the other side. And then you decided just to add a trifecta in there as well by saying, you know what, as if this isn't difficult enough, I'm going to start a startup.
Yeah, it was I was honestly a very personal choice at that time. I had some experiences in medicine and experiences in acting world where I kind of saw at the top of that world, you're privy to see things that are very nicely painted on the outside from other people's viewpoints. And in medicine, everything I wanted to do, you sacrifice 10 years of training and all of, whatever brain you have to this path. And I wanted to help patients. And I realized over time that I would be at the mercy of the healthcare billing system, and I would not be able to practice patient care in an altruistic way that I really wanted to do. And so I had some patient encounters where, doing through clinical research and trials that, patient safety was kind of put at risk for the benefit of the healthcare billing system. So the entrepreneur in me was like, I need to do something to change this. No, this is not okay. And then also with acting on that side, seeing how big the show got, I knew that my life would go a completely different route. And I just came home and I was like, what did I do today? I bought a really expensive bag. Go me. There's got to be more to my life than this. And kudos to the people who do this for entertainment and to entertain others, because I think that is very, very altruistic in itself. But at the end of the day, there was a very selfish aspect of it that I just could not stomach. So definitely I had this fork in the road. And while I was at my grad school studies at Hopkins, I did an MPH practicum that led to a nonprofit fellowship. So I worked under the former FDA commissioner for Obama, who was a dean of the School of Public Health, and some of the very best public health leaders in the nation. So I came up with a way to make a completely self-sustaining framework for nonprofit, which is not done traditionally for nonprofits. And we started within vision disparities, was how we started Vision Market, to help underserved communities get access to completely free glasses and sunglasses, or not sunglasses, but glasses and vision care, because it should not be a privilege or a luxury for them. It's one of the basic needs that they have. And then from there, we wanted to pull in a consumer side. So I definitely wanted to add more sustainable aspects to it for revenue channels, and looking at consumer space, what's done in commerce, what hasn't been done, Warby Parker, sharing economy, and kind of sat there and scratched my head and was like, why can't I just shop with what I already have? I didn't anticipate how big the idea was going to become, because we essentially came across a whole new way to shop.
Absolutely incredible. And what I especially love about you, I'm going to talk about execution, but execution comes with a few things inherently. Number one, it comes with trauma, having to achieve extremely difficult tasks. And number two, it comes with having to listen to customers so that you can execute, learn, evolve, and then execute again. And you started off with the vision side of it, and you said, okay, we need a marketplace. We need to be able to track the things that are bought and sold. We need to make sure that marketplace is accessible to consumers. And then consumers started to then speak to you and say, hey, we want other products in here as well. And then you took that to the next level. So let's talk about, number one, the evolution of how MyMarkit moved from vision, then into sneakers, and now into all luxury. And then afterwards, I want to go back into a little bit of the trauma and the challenges of building what you've built, because it sounds so far as if it was just a picnic. It was a beautiful Sunday afternoon. The sun was shining. You had this lovely rug out. You had like your wine and your cheese, and it was just lovely.
Gossip Girl, my neuroscience, and now I made a new in a shop. Yeah, no, it's never that easy.
No. So it wasn't the case. But let's start with the evolution of the product first, and let's talk about some of the people that were there driving that evolution. And I want to, just before you answer, add one extra point in here. I never believe a company ever pivots. I always believe we evolve. And I say we as much as us, Expert Dojo, as an accelerator, as MyMarkit, as every other company we work with. Because when we start this brand new idea that has never existed before, I believe it is never more than 13 to 15% baked. It's impossible because it's brand new. And then what happens is a customer tells us something. Sometimes it's yes, sometimes it's no. But both of those answers get us to 13.5%. And then as we go further down, we bring in team members, and some are good and some are terrible. And both good and terrible bring us from 13.5% to 14%. And the only important two characteristics which are required to build an awesome company that goes past the 50% mark is, number one, the ability to be able to listen to people, including customers, and see where you go to. And then number two, the execution and the resilience that you go in there. So let's start with the evolution of the product and the listening to people and how you took it from vision all the way to the other iterations. And then we'll move on to your execution.
Yeah, no, I absolutely love the way that you described that, because it's so true. I think one of the most important lessons that I hold so true to heart in building a business and startup is, you have so many predictive models, and you're modeling and you're projecting and you're figuring out, but listen to your customers. They're telling you what they want. And so, when we launched within the vision space, because it was so new, we had no idea. We came across this new way to shop. People can take their Chanel frames, go on our platform, get other Chanel, Prada, Gucci frames. And it wasn't bartering. It wasn't swapping, because we give them true worth for what it is. So they're actually shopping without the middle part of resale. Mm-hmm. And within the second week of beta, we had just, people come back and they were just fanatic, and they're just like, is this legal? Like, I feel like I'm getting something for free. They're like, how did you do this? They loved it. 100% raving reviews. And we had people come back and say, can you please do this with designer handbags? And I'm just sitting there scratching my head like, yeah, we can. And from designer handbags, actually, we can do a lot more of other things, because truly it's the way of shopping that's unique. So we introduced it in a bite-sized way with one, product category, always knowing that we were going to evolve and expand to other product categories. And so from there, we went through capital innovators, and we worked more on the idea of actually what we're building here. And this way of shopping, there are currently no tax laws on it. It applies to a lot of things that we haven't even thought of. The way I compare it is kind of sharing economy before there's a sharing economy. Yeah. So in evolving and in building this, we also came to LA. We had a duplicate of the platform that I co-founded with the CEO of Triller, who is now advising. And so he's a big sneakerhead. And everybody in the sneaker world was going crazy over this, because they're like, this is exactly what sneakerheads want when they try to, get these sneakers and they hold on to it. They want to make it more valuable. They want to get other sneakers. They want to save money in the whole resale process. And so we had a lot of investors pushing us to open in the sneaker space. And we made a lot of really key partnerships there, and customers loved it there. And we realized, actually, we don't have to go up against some of these competitors directly and just settle. We can go for more too. Synonymous to my life pattern of endeavors. Phenomenal. As well. Go for the impossible. So we evolved into a general marketplace that includes.
By the way, go for the impossible. You know what Walt Disney said about that? He said, go for the impossible. He said, there's less competition there.
Oh, I love that. I love that so much. That reminds me of an Emerson quote I love, which is make the most of yourself, for that is all there is of you.
That's beautiful. Okay. We're just gonna do a quote battle, right? I'm gonna hit you with an Oscar Wilde quote, which is very endemic to the Irish thought process, which is that we're all in the gutter. You know what the gutter is, right? That's not an Irish phrase, right? The gutter. We're all in the gutter, but some of us are looking at the stars.
Oh, I love that. I love
Come
that so
on.
much.
Okay,
Yeah.
I just needed to bring you with that.
I
Okay,
love that.
bring me back. Bring me back.
So we evolved into our product roadmap, which honestly, this is a thing that I look back in hindsight, and I think in having fear building something new, I took so much advice in going into niche markets to hide. And I realized over time, everything we were building here was ultimate product roadmap was to become the general marketplace that we are launching now. Yeah. So I could have saved myself a lot of time had I just jumped straight to the end goal there. But at the same time, I think it was important for us to learn and to build and to scale and to build our platform every single increment of the way so that now we can come out running and we can come out the gates going fast. So we are launching MyMarkit in 10 weeks for the holidays time. And it will be opening with luxury goods in the millennial demographic against GOAT, sneaker space, and the real for luxury goods. And then over time, having rollouts for a general marketplace to go up against like eBay, Mercari, and ultimately becoming something like a marketplace like Amazon for vendors to list and to transact and having a whole new way to shop. It's very exciting.
And how awesome, because we all want nice things. But the challenge with nice things is they can be expensive. The other challenge with nice things is they're not as nice 6 or 12 or 18 months later. Like, they're amazing when you just buy them. And for you might say a handbag. For me, actually, it would be a tennis racket. It would be like the most awesome, epic tennis racket in the whole world. But then you have it for a little while. And for somebody else, even 6 months' time, it's an awesome, epic tennis racket. But I want something else. For you, it's like the handbag. Or for somebody else, it might be like these incredible sneakers. We have these things that we love, but we want to continue to have that relationship of, oh my God, I feel so incredible that I just acquired this and I want people to see it and I also want me to see it and I want people to experience me experiencing it. And it's that whole experiential economy, but it's incredibly difficult without a marketplace like yours. Yeah, because you spend your $3,000 or $2,000 or $500 or whatever it is, and it's like, oh, dude, I got no money left. That's it. I'm like stuck, and I'm stuck with a product which in 6 months' time I'm not gonna have. Especially if it's things which are very visual, like handbags or coats or stuff that other people will see, and I was like, isn't that the same handbag you've had for the last forever? So you allow them that really fluid ability to be able to get access to the goods that they love and adore and they want. And then the second that they don't love them as much, they pass them on to somebody else who does.
And exactly what you said about that. And at the heart of what we've done here is that we've created a true digital currency. So we attach, using IP ledgers, the value of an item inherently to the commodity. So that Hermes handbag you're talking about, that tennis bracket, we're using US dollar bills to buy it, but the value isn't in the piece of paper bill. It's the item, so in creating this true digital currency, it does a couple things, like you said, now post-COVID climate, and even pre-COVID climate, there's been acceleration towards people having an easier way to save money and to shop in different alternative solutions in the resale market, you name it, in order to save more on cash, on liquidity, because post-COVID, a lot of people do not have liquidity to go buy and have waste, and why circular fashion is on trend as well. And past the fashion markets, this new way of shopping, creating payment gateways to go on and off, we wanted to make it really universal, where users can now use those points in their wallet and shop for groceries, their flight, cars, you name it, for different things we haven't thought of yet. So we start within kind of this space of consumerism, and as we go, it's basically, that's commerce. Commerce is buying, is consuming. So let's make a better, more efficient way to do that without loss.
Yeah, it's incredible. You mentioned a term very quickly as you went through that, which is the circular economy. And I think what a lot of people listening to this podcast don't realize is that fashion in general is like the most wasteful of all wasteful. There's just hardly anything can compete with fashion on absolute and unadulterated waste. And so creating this circular economy where these things are continually being recycled and reused and reloved over and over again, and the amazing quality that's put in to make these goods great, because that a lot of the time, that is the difference between a relatively expensive item and something which is cheap and comes from somewhere which maybe is not your backyard, is that they're so well put together, they could last for, 6 years, 10 years, 15, 20 years, and they can stay beautiful as long as they go into the economy. The other thing I love about what you've built in there is not just a marketplace. It's not even just a digital currency. You've actually got an entire supply chain tracking system that tracks the goods from the beginning all the way around that circle. So as it's going through people, folks don't have to continually wonder, where did it come from? What happened to it? Because you're building that in. You want to talk a little bit about that as well?
Yeah, I think, in the byproduct of what we built here, we came up with something really amazing, which is we because of the ledger system, the embedded sensor, the 1-2 system we made, we have automated 100% fail-proof authentication and operations with this, which is phenomenal. And, gross margins were 87% for beta, scaling out to 70 to 80% gross margin for e-com. That's almost unheard of because of our business model. And so we can pass those savings on to our users, whereas competitors like Goat and The Real, they only have more and more operational overhead as they get bigger. We actually reduce that because we've automated within our marketplace and help with retention for keeping users on the marketplace. So that is really exciting. And just like, what you said about circular fashion, people are going to do things with this we haven't thought of yet. This works for retail, for retail vendors, as an example, instead of having to discount at the end of season, come onto our platform, list as a vendor. Now they have revolving revenue for the item. It's a great business model for a lot of people. And, I think people are going to do things with this that's going to be super fun and super fantastic we haven't thought of yet.
Fantastic. And just before we get to the resilience, I want to add in one extra piece as well, which is the blockchain aspect. So yes, there is also a complexity within how you actually work internally, and maybe speak to this as well, because when you start moving down the road of blockchain and actually looking for transparency with what's actually happening with the item, it starts to become extremely expensive and extremely complicated to build a system. But it's also a wonderful moat and a wonderful defense against competitors coming into the same space. So I love how you've built like the authentication. You've also built in the fact that you've got the strong marketplace. You've also built in the fact that you've got really strong product. But now you've layered in on top of it the necessity for anybody coming at this to actually be able to now rise to that bar that you've set on the blockchain level. So speak a little bit about that before we go into the resilience area.
Yeah. At the heart of what we are, in order to create this currency or value and attach it to the item, we had to deconstruct the concept of currency. And thank God the science of blockchain exists now, which actually works. It's been used in supply chain for a while. It's embedded sensors have been around for 30 years. It can track a whale through the ocean, So all of these things are tools that we can now actually use for a new way to shop. So our system is an internal marketplace of these transaction ledgers. So as I buy, let's say that iPhone or that Hermes handbag, that ledger will follow the lifetime of the item as it moves through our marketplace. So if it accrues naturally over time and appreciates a value, that ledger will give it the validity of that appreciation organically. Or if it depreciates, the natural depreciation organically. So true worth is transparent, and that I think is a much needed change or presence in commerce now, because again, with retail, you have markup. Resale, you have high fees. Why is the consumer paying so much money to shop? Just give them the item they want. Give it to them for as little as possible with the overhead. So the transaction ledger is at the heart of our secret sauce, and we're really proud to have built that.
Fantastic. And then after we look at the resilience, we're going to move into the actual value proposition for investors as opposed to for consumers. Because for consumers, it's pretty straightforward. But for investors, it's like, how are we going to grow and where are we going to grow to? But I want to speak to the execution first. So let's go a little bit deeper into your soul. Now, I don't need to cry here, but I need to feel it, right? I need you to because so much that you've gone through to make this happen that I know it creates cages and doors and glass walls around you. You're like, no, I can just do it because I'm strong and powerful. But take us through a little bit of that journey, that hero's journey from when you're, and I always look at this like a movie. You know, at the beginning, we get to know the character, we get to know how awesome that person is. And then suddenly, like halfway through the movie, Zorro is like lying down, holding his sword up while the baddie is trying to kill Zorro. And it's like, no, Zorro can never make it through. And they're all the people that are beating down on you as a startup all the way around. And then there's a few rays of hope, which are some people that come through that give you inspiration and light. And then it takes us to the end of the journey where Zorro is victorious. But I want to talk about that part at the beginning when things were really tough and as you're trying to build this and some of the challenges you went through and how you overcame those.
Yeah, I love that question. I think, you know, as a founder and peer-to-peer to other founders or people getting into startup, you know, that journey is so personal. And it's really at the heart of why we do what we do. It's what, you know, gives us going on 2 hours of sleep and gets us through every single sprint. So for me, it was very hard in the beginning because I'm coming out of walking away from pretty much the peak of two different career trajectories and having this idea that I know in my heart could offer people a whole new way to shop and it could really revolutionize and change the landscape of commerce. And it's worthy enough that, you know, for me, it was a personal mission. Like I needed to create this and to see through it. And obviously doing the first steps of doing that was not a walk in the park. It was very hard as a solo female founder. You know, you have so many different setbacks and building a company like this as a solo founder already and as female on top of that was very hard. And that's why I credit my team and advisors who came on very early to, you know, help with the entire cause and set up different steps, make sure we have a good cap, make sure that we did things lean, make sure that every single step they protected me or
I'm just going to, but I'm going to stop you there because humble people will talk about how they have a great team, but people who are not quite so humble will say, I built that team. Like that team exists because I executed properly on the team. So yes, they helped and yes, they gave you support, but at that time, and you've touched upon female founder and then you like moved straight off it.
The
like
team.
speak
I love my team.
Yeah, I'm moving away from your team because I know your team are awesome and they're epic because you chose them and you put them there. But what are the challenges that face a female founder as opposed to anybody else? And we all know the statistical challenges, right? The low percentage of investment that females get, but maybe speak to some of the other areas as well, because they speak to your resilience of breaking through. And I think it's just a conversation worth having.
Yeah, you know, I think, again, statistically, it's been very hard. And personally, I think it's very hard because there's a lot of doubt. There's a lot of doubt within the ecosystem of entrepreneurship that, you know, somebody coming here as a first-time founder, not a serial entrepreneur who's had 3 exits under their belt, you know, showing up in their little high heels with their little handbag, wanting to create a new way to shop. It's very hard to be taken seriously.
But a neuroscientist,
yeah,
you know, it's even worse because you know there's nobody in the room like a tenth as smart as you. Like it just isn't there. And at the same time, you have to go through. And you're not the first female founder to say that. You're not. Actually, every female founder says exactly the same thing. They come into early stage startup, they walk into major VCs' rooms or other people's rooms, and they get treated like an idiot until they get to Series B or Series C, and then folks realize they can make a bunch of money out of them, and the conversation changes, right? And it's ridiculous and it's idiotic, but it's also, it breaks down a lot of founders as they're going through this journey, because there's enough shit on this journey on its own without actually having to go through that. And what I notice about you is a lot of, like, if it was me, I would immediately step up and say, excuse me, do you know how smart I am? Like, I don't think any of you folks realize, dumbasses. Like, what did you do? You did an arts major? Yeah, okay, awesome. Yeah, sorry, I'm smarter. But you don't do that. If anything, you kind of sit more into the background and say, look, I'm going to achieve and execute what I need to execute. And then afterwards, you will realize, it makes you a better person, I believe, than me.
Thank you. And as a proponent for, you know, female founders, and this applies, I think, founders everywhere as well, it's just, as a female for myself, I'm very emotional. So using those emotions is actually a good advantage. And I think is more of an edge to the situation for, you know, as a founder, as a female founder, utilize that, you know, and for me, those were some tough times. And instead of focusing and losing myself on, the emotions where it's making me upset or what's happening, I actually was more solution oriented. So it gives us a bit more sensitivity to the situation. When you have emotions in a situation, it gives you a bit more clairvoyance into understanding, anything between team dynamics to user cases to dev sprint and build. It makes you kind of think outside the box, and to use a little bit of that sensitivity helps so much in achieving that, I guess, the power of will. That is what gets you going and keeps you powering through. So in those tough times, they were very tough. And using the emotional aspect of that was, being introspective and looking inside and not focusing on the negatives, but thinking, hey, what's the solution here? What do we do? How do I gauge this? Be a bit more, have more perspective on it, and then to move forward and to use that for a better change after that.
So that's a fantastic point. And look, one thing's a fact. Women founders statistically are more successful than male founders. And many people, it's a statistic fact. And most VCs will tell you just the fact that it's easier to manipulate in many ways male founders from certain places than female founders. And they realize that with enough money, both folks can make it. They bypass this particular conclusion, but it is a conclusion nonetheless. And you made an important point, which is that you said, I'm driven by emotions. What I believe is that the female founders that I've worked with, the really great ones like you are driven by emotions, but you strategize with logic. So your emotions will get you past that point, but then you'll strategize with logic. And I even remember Debbie from Vertanza, who just oversubscribed her round recently. When I spoke to her and I said, look, we're going to invest in you. People are going to discriminate against you because of your age. People are going to discriminate against you because you are a female founder. And people are going to discriminate against you because you're a solo founder. Those three things, and they will discriminate so hard, you won't even believe it. So the only way that my investment has any chance of making it through is if we can bypass the bias using greed and FOMO. And the only way we can do that is through sales. And is it unbelievably unfair? Yes, it is unbelievably unfair. And if you get stuck on the piece that's unfair, then it'll be really hard for it to break through. But actually, if you think about what we need to achieve to then activate the greed and the FOMO, then we'll do it. And that whole being driven by the emotion of this being so important that it has to be, and at the same time being able to step back and be cold as ice and say, okay, but this is what I have to do, fair or unfair, I will do this. And you are exactly the same. And that's why within my mind, when I looked at you at the beginning, I said, she's incredible. Other folks, it will take longer to realize that, but that's absolutely fine, because when this platform is built, the traction that's going to come from it will mean that FOMO and that greed factor will immediately be hit, and we'll just drive forward. So thank you for that answer. That was great. So let's move into the final segment, and this is about how we drive revenue and how we get investment and what investments we're going to take in when. So you've already got plenty of investment to get the platform ready. Next step is the last phase of the platform is going to come out just before the end of the year, right?
Yes.
And then we are going to launch like crazy next year. What happens next year, both from how much money are we going to raise, and then also from the perspective of how are we going to grow users and what does the revenue look like going forward? And let's see if we can track this forward so that the investors who are listening can realize how their investment will appreciate over time.
Yeah, I think for us, everything is based on strategy. I need to see every plane A to Z before we start hitting the ground running. I need to make sure that we have double checked everything. And what we rely on growing revenue here is something that's, for us, tried and true and works, which is partnerships. It will cost so much money for marketing to do digital marketing and different things. If we make partnerships strategically with vendors through our B2B side, they're actually pushing out sales for us. It benefits them, it benefits us. It onboards more users. We adopt all of their user demographic and user base. And that is kind of a domino effect that rolls on its own. And, you onboard one vendor after another, and then you go forward. And of course, we also do digital marketing, but there we also have a lot of science that we go into it, and also a lot of user psychology, because a lot of how our shopping behavior is emotional, and we want to take advantage of that on the user side so that we can make sure customers are happy and customers are saving money and coming onto our platform and they're having a great experience. So on the user adoption side, that's kind of our game plan. We've onboarded a lot of different partnerships within the sneaker space, within the luxury consignment space, and resale space, and making more partnerships as we get going to launch in Asia, actually. Talking to, I don't know if I can say this, but discussing with Alibaba.
Yeah. Oh, good.
Okay.
Of course you can say that, because they're one of the biggest retailer wholesalers on the planet. Of course. No, the question
we're
here is
with some big marketplaces. Yeah.
Yeah. So for the investors, what everybody's thinking is, how long does it take to get this marketplace up to $100,000 a month in revenue? And what type of investment are you going to raise to get you to that level? And then when we go from $100,000 a month to $1 million a month, which is when we know we start moving into unicorn space, then what does that roadmap look like?
Yeah, we've done a lot of prep and planning so that when we come out the gates, when MVP is launched around holidays time, within the next Q1 to Q3 of next year, I really want to hit those milestones of getting much over 1 million. So, how we're doing this is, again, a lot of strategy. We're looking at competitors, looking at, trying to take advantage of adopting their user base. And then also how we're funding right now is very lean. So we're going through a small, safe amount and getting in our, getting our oversubscribed round through VCs by going through our safe round for our next round. And so, a lot of it, again, is also strategy with the fundraising. And I want the metrics to speak for itself. We don't want you to guesstimate. We don't want you to sit there and wonder. We want you to, have your first dibs so that you're not missing on the boat. You're not missing out on the boat, right? But at the same time, as soon as we launch, you're going to be very glad you didn't miss out, because the metrics are going to speak for itself. So.
Incredible. And then I'm guessing towards the end of Q1 next year, we'll be going for a good sized seed round. And then probably towards the end of the year, stroke the beginning of 2022, we will go for a decent Series A.
Yeah. I think we might move a little faster.
A little faster.
I think we're already, we're probably going to be moving through our seed round before Q1 of next year, actually. So, yeah.
Incredible. I absolutely love it. Nan, listen, I couldn't be happier. Sometimes I look at unfairness in the world and I think, gosh, that's terrible. And then other times I look at it, I go, God, that's brilliant, because we get to invest in incredible founders that are building phenomenal companies. I know you are also surrounded by so many other people in the ecosystem down here in LA who are supporting you and driving you and investing in you. And I know the current round that we have looks like it's going to be oversubscribed pretty easy. So I'm not even sure anybody can get into this one. But for folks who want to contact you, let's give them the website address so they can get onto the website. And then let's also give them your email address as well.
Sure. So the website will be mymarkit.co. So it's mymarkit.co. And my email, I don't know if I can say that on air, but sure.
Yeah,
it'll be nan@mymarkit.co.
Beautiful. So everybody will get you. No, just the emails are always... Yes, very good. So the emails are always good. And look, investors out there, we always put our money where our mouth is. Nan is on this podcast because we've invested in her. We've invested in her company. We believe in her company. We believe that this is going to be a very, very fast growing enterprise. And anybody who would like to have any contacts or would like to look through our diligence is always welcome to contact me. You know where I am, but it's Brian at Expert Dojo if you need me. Nan, thank you. You're awesome.
Thank you, Brian.
To be continued into a beautiful place.
Thank you so much.